Hello and welcome, fellow citizens near and far. Some good conversation on the topic of sustainability and solutions. That is what we're going to be talking about today. Lots of different topics to get into, lots of points of interest to discuss. Just to go over a few of the points that is kind of like the idea, the parameters, we're going to, of course, be defining what sustainability and solutions actually means. A few of my friends are going to tackle that with me together. We're going to be exploring the potential benefits and the importance of sustainable practices in smaller communities and in areas, for individuals as well. Identifying areas where we can actually make a difference practically, transportation, food systems, energy, those kinds of things. We're going to be empowering individuals to make informed choices. And it's going to be a lot of other really interesting things. I'm really excited to talk about encouraging collaboration and finding ways that you can get involved, boots on the ground in your area. We're going to be celebrating impacts of individuals and grassroots organizations that are already doing the good work in the area. There's something about just not knowing what's already going on. I have a few examples in my area, and of course, there is a wealthy nation of different people doing different kinds of things, and some really cool things are happening. One of the key points that I wanted to point to was, the revitalization into farmers markets and CSAs, community share agriculture, which can be in the form of meat. It can also be in the form of vegetables and whatnot, but it's basically like your local farmer supplying you with local food. And it's a great way to have more direct contact with those people around you. Such examples like that and many more is what we're going to be talking about today. There's a lot of different ways to go with this guy, because when we look at just food in general, that tends to be where our minds first go. The idea of composting our food scraps, using that as fertilizer. We talk about regenerative agriculture. Last week, my buddy Lawrence from Farm Fresh 24/7 was up, and he was talking about how when he started in this about 15 years ago, it was just the idea of finding sustainability practices, and now the language has evolved to reform regenerative agriculture and other such things. So it's interesting to take those ideas over time, because some of that knowledge is based upon indigenous cultures that we have, chosen to forget in one fashion or another, but we stand upon the ancestors of said knowledge. So exploring that and bringing it back into a reality in, this 21st century revitalized sort of way might be the way to go. Now, everything that we discuss is blueprints. It's going to be places and things that some of the examples I'll bring up are actual things that are happening in the world, and there are duplicates of that depending on the area. You just got to know how and where to look. From food waste and food in general, I also want to talk a little bit about transportation, because I think that's really a key way that we can look forward into new ways of efficiency for each other. And then, we'll let the conversation go where it will. Welcome to the party.
Almost didn't turn on the camera, but we're just being authentic here. How are you doing, friend?
That's right. I'm doing good. I was lucky to get a nap in today, and feeling quite refreshed from that. And then I was so lucky to have an AI assistant to help me kind of cram right before here, because my wonderful friend, who is still in the process of moving, just could not join us today. So I'm trying to step up and be more of an expert than I usually do at these. I usually like to be like the audience surrogate and ask questions, but I've got some stuff to cover for sure.
All right. No sweat.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. We always do, right?
That's right. And this topic is one of those that every time I've tackled it, something's come up. It's a hard one to kind of put into a scope. The very first time I covered it, I ended up getting called into work about halfway through the live, so I had to end it short and had to go save the day. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to try it again, because I think it's a very important matter to talk about.
Oh, but I wanted to stay and talk about the revolution. Oh.
Exactly. Because this is the meat of the thing. It's not any big brash acts. We all want to kind of hang our hope and our hat on the idea that something big is going to happen and then everything's just going to be okay again. But it actually happens in a lot of small steps, and sustainability and solutions is at the heart of many of those, if we intend to keep the momentum going in a way that's not only beneficial to us but the entire planet. And so that's one of the key reasons why it's so important to discuss.
I think a lot of people forget, and this is a great segue. One of the things I wanted to lead off with was we all want some kind of system we want it to be like, okay, so we found this new system and chapter 1 is amazing. Can't wait to tell you about it. It's like we're not building a fucking IKEA coffee table here.
Yep.
Future
True.
is a wilderness. The future is a wilderness. And it's sort of like wherever you are on this planet right now, if you feel like you're under the thumb, the only way out is to grab a machete and start carving your own path. And it's helpful when other people say, hey, we've tried this and this works. We talk about the receipts on this channel a lot, but I think it's almost best that somebody just says, I need to figure this out. Because then ultimately people are going to find which avenues work for them rather than just trying on different activist hats and wasting a bunch of time trying on different activist hats, It's like just realize that the future is a wilderness and nobody actually knows where we're going.
I get you. I feel you. And to a point, I do agree. I think that there is something about there being, because a lot of people, when they get into this, they think that they have to reinvent the wheel, and we don't necessarily need that over and over and over again. And so one of the key things is the ability to look around and see if anybody's implementing something similar to what you think might be the case or whatnot. And like, don't be wrong, I think that it's a many paths kind of thing. We all have to try and get creative and find solutions in new ways. But I think that there are some people doing good work. And so there's like a give and take. Like part of it is definitely getting active and involved in your own way, in a way that you're passionate about. And like, if you need to create the space, then create the space. Like that's a really like strong move forward. I can tell you from experience that as somebody who has created spaces to have some like people come in, it does kind of suck when you're the only one it really sucks when you're the only one who shows up to band practice. But, if you keep showing up and keep doing the things over and over again, you start to see results. It's like instead of fighting tooth and nail, being consistent really is part of the journey. And so once you find something that you're passionate about, sticking to it is really important, I think. And we've seen that in a lot of different ways. Like there's a lot of movements out there that, on massive and small scales. Lawrence from Farm Fresh 24/7, I think, is one of the key things that we can point to, because it started as an app but has now grown into this entire like movement where he's teaching people. Like they have monthly or biweekly meetups where like he's teaching people CPR tips, and like they're doing bread making classes and like really doing community stuff in like a new vitalized way to help support each other and kind of build it bigger as they go along. And that's just one example among hundreds of people doing this thing in a new way. I think that's really important to highlight. But at the same time, if you have an idea that you don't see anybody doing, then yeah, creating the space is part of it. And, sometimes just allowing for the availability of it, even if it's just an online space, like a book of face page or, what have you, like start somewhere.
I think what I'm trying to say is in this activist space, instead of saying, do this or this works, it's more like the same thing I would tell my music students, which is this can work.
Yeah.
If you're in this musical situation, this works. If you want to play more like Joe Pass or Jimi Hendrix or whatever your flavor is, it's like in this situation, historically, we've done this. So this can work, but it's more of, because I never wanted to give my music students such a rigorous dogma that they never thought for themselves and found out how to take this source material in music and make it their own, which is ultimately what we're talking about, is people taking autonomy in their life and grabbing life by the horns, so to speak. And, what works for one person may not work for you. What interested one person, like Lawrence, he felt the fire and he built it. He built it in a way that made sense for him, though. Yeah. Right? And so am I going to be able to go replicate that? In theory, yes, because I'm a human being. I'm able-bodied and I have all these things. So by the books, I should be able to go and recreate what someone else already has. But do I have it within me to actually follow through in that vein? Am I interested enough in that way? Do I have those skill sets? And am I going to be as apt to be successful in that way as he was? Probably not. And in that respect, are there possibly other avenues that I can follow that might be more beneficial to me? And like you were just saying, if I can't find that avenue, perhaps I need to make it.
And see, and I think that's part of it. Like, the adeptitude of knowing where where you're going to be passionate, where you're going to be the most effective, where your skill set matters is definitely a key step among this whole sustainability idea. Everybody plays a part. I said last week, if we didn't have, photographers who took pictures of the Montgomery bus riots, like it wouldn't be as clear in our history because, whitewashing happens all the time. And so like everybody plays a part. All you have to really figure out is how your particular skill set, jives into the movement in which way. And like, then when we look at the scope of availability of like avenues to look into, there, like I said, I want to broach not only in the food section, but I also want to cover things like transportation and energy costs and like other ideas of like ways that we can just be better to the planet. Cause that's what sustainability is about. It's like being better stewards to the planet, so that way we get a more regenerative return on our investment, basically. And that's that is an important factor when we're seeing devastating storms happen that nobody gets any warning about and stuff like that. So like these kinds of things matter, but it's slow, steady progress. It's not anything flashy and fast, and that's what I feel is the spark that we need to really initiate in the individual is like what gets them to move, what gets them from this sitting position to like I have to find a way to utilize my skills for this event. Like that's a tough question to answer for me.
It's the biggest part of it, because ask someone who's a life coach or an instructor of any sort, a yoga instructor, music instructor, like getting people to commit to the routine is everything. Because again, when we're asking people to divest or to reinforce their local community systems, maybe the ones that are already in place or building new ones, all of those things are, to me, I put them in the same category as going to the gym, quitting an unhealthy habit, learning a new musical instrument, starting a new business. All of these things require a tremendous amount of sacrifice, a sacrifice of time and energy, sometimes financial resources, if that's what it calls for. And, I think that's the biggest reason that we're in this mess to begin with. Because it's way more convenient to just let the system do its thing.
The convenience factor, the creature comforts, the fact that, we have a mentality of I got mine, so why do I have to care about, outside of that scope is, possibly part of, the apathetic wash of what makes this a more difficult climb. But everybody gets chances and opportunities to make better decisions, and what happens to us radically affects the individual on that level to, sometimes it can be an off switch and, they will not engage. I cannot expect 100% participation, but I'm willing to try and inspire 20% if I can. And if that means like showing up daily to be like, there's this idea. Have you considered this? What about this thing? And like just doing it over and over and over again and hoping to inspire other people to do the same. So that way it's not just like my font and flavor out there. That's what I really want. You know what I mean? I just want to inspire more of that. Cause I think that's a tsunami that gains like, speed over time and whatnot.
Yeah. And then we're seeing it happen in real time. It's just one of those slow rollouts, where the more people we see instituting a more, should I say, what's the word I'm looking for? Non-corporate rideshare type program, senior transit, any of those things, like the more we see people taking a risk and trying out some new approach to doing it, the more it'll catch on. That's what always happens. It's like, that's why it's like, when Nickelback gets famous, how many other bands came out shortly thereafter that sang and sounded exactly like them?
It's true.
Pearl
No, it's true.
comes out, and before you know it, everyone's like, hell yeah. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yep.
that's how we work as human beings. So it's like the more that we can get people into these activist spaces, the more likely it is that somebody else will see it and say, hey, I could do that. And that's all we're really hoping for, is spreading it like that.
I really just wanted to offer up as many options as possible. Like for instance, like with the rideshare, like the Denver rideshare co-op group that was starting a couple months ago are relaunching like this weekend or next weekend. Big old celebration that they're doing for it and everything. And they're like really hoping to kick off like this idea in a way that is sustainable, in all of its aspects and practices. They've got some bumps and kind of an unclear path ahead of them, just because Denver, as much as I love like the way that new ideas can pop up and thrive here, there's also like there is kind of a little bit of a traditionals pushback kind of deal. And so we've seen, I don't know, it's been an interesting case to kind of watch them get up and move along those lines. But I'm really excited to see what happens. Makes me wish I was staying in the area so that way we could kind of help participate with that program, but not happening. But that's okay. But with the rideshare, and like here in Denver, we also have stuff like there's Pedestrian Dignity, who talks a lot about different avenues of like the way that our streets are constructed for cars over humans, and like there's some places that are absolutely abysmal, and then there's some places that are better. Like he is actually located in Denver, but he's been all over the country, and he talked about for a while how like Chicago is one of the best walkable cities, especially in that Triangle district and whatnot. And like he's been in like an advocate who gets with policymakers, which is another point about sustainability and solution, is pressuring the policymakers that are in power right now and maybe telling them that, hey, we can vote you out for somebody who will do our job. Like, really pressuring them is part of this as well. It's a many different sided base of attack. But he goes around, he gets them to like walk with him in these areas and be like, do you see how bad this is? And like, how like somebody in a wheelchair can't use this area because there is no sidewalk. And like, he does a lot of great work. And I think that he's gained a lot of traction just in that idea of pointing out where the society has like left the most vulnerable to just kind of deal with it sort of deal. And then there's other things like back into the food sector. I saw in Denver this thing called We Don't Waste, and it grew from a very grassroots kind of thing. They have their whole facility now. They've made partnerships with the local King Soopers and other grocery stores and stuff to basically take the stuff that they were going to toss out into their dumpsters, and like they get other food donations from other places, and they're a distributing center for people who are food insecure. They have their own regulations and whatnot because they've built up to this big thing that it's maybe not as easily accessible as when they first were working or whatnot. But like just to see the growth of like that organization start in such a way that they use the model of the food bank and charity to get started, but the way that they're working as a distributor of like slightly expired or like used by dates kind of stuff, and like and making those into baskets and stuff for other people. It's a good foot forward into a way of sustainable practices. There's other things like the Denver Urban Garden Group. They have an actual composting club. So like you can take your own food scraps, and in the city that's kind of hard to deal with. Just like most people, food like. The recycling here in Denver is not nearly as good as it is in like California and whatnot. It hasn't been as streamlined and things like that. But composting is one of those that can do a large amount of good per season and whatnot. Like, we're talking about getting nutrients back into the soils and whatnot. It's a very important part of sustainability and regenerative agriculture and all those things. So like, there are a million small pieces to this, and just trying to find the right one that sparks the interest in any one particular soul is kind of one of the hardest parts of it too. That's what I'm saying.
It's lighting people up, you know what I mean? You like my Cedar Point tank top?
Dig it.
It kind of floored me, and I know this is probably a little off the beaten path, but it goes back to the point, trust me. When older millennial guy who's on here, conservative creator, came on to tell his story, the person who got him arrested called local officials, police, 400 times.
Wow.
It's like, your senator has a phone number too, right? Your representative has a phone number too, right?
Right.
And it's like all the wasted energy. It's like I see in this space, it's like so many people have all this pent up energy around politics, and they me included, like we vent, which is good, get it out. But then there's this like misdirected energy. It's like energy is just leaking out of us all the time because we're being bombarded with all this bad news all the time, right? Not to mention the very real day-to-day socioeconomic struggles of the people. It's like we have all this misdirected energy, and I think one of the most important ways that people can funnel that energy is by working alongside other people. I really do.
Yep.
And a lot of the shit that we're talking about, a lot of the stuff that I talk about, I only know because I worked at a chamber of commerce, at a not-for-profit organization. That's an official organization, right? But the resources and the things that we're telling people to do and the methods that we're asking them to use to do them, it's like already happening. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are already people in all these respective communities who are doing the work. It's like it's already happening, and all the wasted hours leaking this energy out everywhere else. It's like, you could be concentrating it in such a way that it's not only going to help, but it'll actually fill your cup in a way that you never knew possible.
Yes. No, I definitely greatly advocate for the idea of getting like boots in the ground, just like among other people for any various amount of any amount of time or whatnot. If you can, like if it be an activity, like this is one of the reasons why when we talk about people leaving the church and going completely secular, they end up closing a big piece of like that community off from themselves without really realizing what they're doing. And without a supplement in some area, that's where a lot of that energy gets pent up because it gets expressed in community and in in the situations where, and it reminds me of like when the old like introvert extrovert ones, which I think are just like terms that don't really fit anymore. Even those people who say that they feel like introverts, like no, because like you still have that same pent up energy, and you don't have that after some sort of social event. Yeah, you might there might be uncomfortability and whatnot. It's a social interaction, and I get that, sure, but like there is an energy exchange there, positive and negative, like electrons and shit being exchanged on like a like on a scientific level that actually lends itself to our endocrine systems expressed and all of our systems and whatnot. It's part of what makes us social creatures. So
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't in a very social mood today. I had to take my daughter to her mom's house. It was her mom's birthday yesterday, so we stopped at the local coffee shop because I knew there was a local artist there who was selling dried flowers, and I wanted to pick up some, as a gift to her mom from her. And they had some dried lavender in there, and her and I were being hams about it, just like basically huffing this lavender, like, oh my God, it's a gift from the gods. It's just so good. Oh, it smells so amazing. And we were having fun, but this old man came over and he's holding a stack of newspapers and he's like, I just, wondered if maybe you guys want a copy of this. And he tries to kind of give me the spiel, and immediately my millennial alarm bells go off where I'm like, dude, I don't want a subscription to anything right now, man. Like everybody's asking me for a monthly subscription right now.
Try to sell me something. Yep.
I can't right now, and it was totally free though. And he's like, no, it's just some community events. And like I snapped out of my resistance to it. And I was like, oh, hey, man, like, oh, thank you. Like, what's in here, And he kind of yanked me out of my already, like, I don't want to talk to anybody but my daughter mode. Because we all go through it, right? Like sometimes when you're out in public, building community is the last thing on your mind. And there I was in the community hub, which is it's a privately owned small town coffee shops where everybody goes in the morning. All the real estate agents, the mayor's freaking there in the morning. Like it is quintessential town center stuff.
Right.
And there I am in that space, not really in the energy to handle it, right? But the right person, the right energy snapped me out of it. And I am going to make a video about it. Did I bring it in? I don't think I did. It's really interesting because it actually goes to the conversation. Don't worry, Tripp. I'm not going to meander.
Well, no, I just want to point to the fact that community isn't always convenient. And so, like, that sort of interaction is something that we have to be willing to deal with, like, out in the real world and be all right with. And it's one of those, like, you look for the opportunity and, seems like a whole roller coaster of emotions you went through. But, it's that kind of concept of, it's not always convenient to exist in community. In fact, that's kind of a given. But, like, it's the payoff and benefits, outweigh the it's a social contract thing. You know what I mean? That's what I really mean by it. As he goes to retrieve
I
this
think we're
community
just
paper.
overly sensitive.
Yes.
I just think we're being overly sensitive a lot of the time. Like these grading personalities, this draining of social energy and all this stuff. It's like we're being very protective of our energy, which is fair. And I actually think that's just a byproduct of just the overuse of our time. Everybody and their brother is asking for our time. Netflix for our time. TikTok for our time. People in our real lives, our jobs. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's probably going to be backwards, right? Yeah, of course.
Yes. It is. You want to read it? Read us a little bit of it?
No. I'll show it to you, though.
I'm so sorry that you're having to deal with that, Tiffany. I really am. Ah, nice.
And this, of course, is talking about the World Fair that was going on.
A little bit of vision casting kind of stuff.
What happened to our future? And dude, how many times have I brought this up, like even in our own private conversations?
Absolutely.
And like that's what they used to do. They're sort of like, in the future, the United States of America is going to be X, Y, and Z. And like now, most of the politics, it's all reactionary stuff. Like it's all like, well, here's what we're doing in light of this situation. Well, because this is going on, we're going to have to do that. And it's like, I know nobody's doing that anymore. So I feel like you have an entire nation not knowing where the hell we're going, which is why this conversation is so important, because building community and participating in systems of sustainability gives you at least some modicum, some semblance of control back in your life. You're not just riding on the cruise ship and just hoping that somebody somewhere starts talking like this again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Talking about the future. It's so rare.
It's one of those things that if we don't see it, sometimes we do actually have to be it. And like there's 100 ways to do it. Like, you know, old school print, I dig it. I really do. Feels kind of nostalgic a little bit. And very much hyper local. And I think that, you know, it's really funny because during conversation I had today during my Right to Food community of practice group, which right now is full of, you know, people trying not to be doom and gloom about the situation of the bill passing and whatnot, but, you know, stating the facts that they are losing a ton of funding and whatnot like that. And so trying to interject a bit of hope in there was a bit difficult, but, you know, seeing a way forward when the system's mechanisms have been so long entrenched is one of the reasons why, like, you know, I really feel like in the sustainability factor, outthinking the system is going to be part of it. Envisioning something, you know, and I always come from it. We always come from it from a self-agency sort of standpoint, like getting up and do for yourself. Whereas, you know, the people that I was in this meeting with were very much more of like a top-down kind of structure, feeding the system sort of deal. And it is one of those that it can be, something that can be sustainable in practice, in theory, but we have to get creative about solutions. And what a lot of people are afraid of is they can't see past the status quo. They can't see the fact that, you know, there is a different story to tell and a different way to do things that are outside this, you know, these long set up entrenched systems that have run for our entire lives and for generations. But there definitely are.
What do you call those things? They're like illusion pictures where if you look at it in one way, it looks like a candelabra going down the center. But then if your eyes adjust, you see it's like two faces looking at each other. You know the kind. Well, I don't know what that's called. That to me is like the space that we're in. Is so many people can only see the candelabra, and we're like begging them. It's like no. I'm telling you, there's two faces looking at each other here, and they're just like, I don't know. And so I think it's a new frontier. And people need to be thinking of it like a new frontier. Knowing that clear-cut bullet point lists complete with step-by-step instructions like you're building an IKEA coffee table, like those things will be rare in this space. They'll be rare. And we see that. We see that now. If you and I try to do any research for these panels or an upcoming video, you try to find this, like, all right, there's just like one central hub for this, right? Has nobody thought about this? And of course they have, but they come and they go. The activist movement's always shifting, moving, and changing. It's a hard thing to like grab onto. It's like that thing in every tourist trap town, that like water balloon thing that you squeeze and it slips out of your hand. That's what it feels like trying to label the activist community to me. and trying to
Right,
give
right.
people that clear and concise, here's what it all is. Well, this group over here is doing this. They're working on food. Here's another one working on transport. Here's some wild new frontiers in energy and turning plastic into gasoline and things like that, you know?
So here's the thing about that. There are so many people. In fact, I have a really good friend, Angela, who's working on like volunteer expos. The idea of getting people in the room and people who want to, help and like organizations that do, like not the big top dogs, the ones that are, heavily well funded and stuff, but like real people, boots on the ground style. When she went looking for just the south side of the Denver metro, came up with like 2,000 organizations that she had to like go through and whittle through. And it was just like, some of them were inactive, some of them, like some of them didn't meet the criteria she was looking for. Well, she got through that. She put on the first one. It had, I think it was 24 and like really great companies, really great organizations, people who are like, using like a youth group kind of idea, getting young people to be active in community membership and those kinds of things. A couple of different like homeless places, a couple of people that worked with food, and a couple of people that worked with animals. Then she's working on the north side of Denver Metro, and she got that she got to the website or wherever where all these places are registered. 4,000 organizations that she is now whittling through, and it honestly is such a slog for her that she's having a hard time trying to pick, like she's trying to find the A list and trying to contact them and stuff, but it's a lot for like one single person. But so like my point is, there are a lot of people trying to do things, and sometimes it doesn't work out, sometimes you fall flat on your face, but like the point is to keep on trying. And sometimes there's going to be somebody who is doing something similar enough that you can just join the bandwagon. Finding them is really hard. There is no, from what I understand, there is no like central place to find all the people doing the good things. I know that there are several entrepreneur types trying to like make an app to do just that very thing, but like there's always pieces and elements missing. I know that in the Citizens Collective group that I'm with, they're actually trying to do exactly that. They've split into 3 different like groups and like are trying to like move forward in ways where there's like people doing good stuff and then people trying to showcase the stuff that those good people are doing, and like that's that sort of setup and whatnot. But there's no centralized hub, and from what I understand, that's a big undertaking.
Oh, but there's definitely plenty of centralized hubs for negative shit, though.
How do you mean?
Have you ever watched the news before?
They still have fluff pieces.
God, I suppose. I suppose.
My point, yeah, say
Thing is, one of the educational institutions for those with disabilities, they actually started buying property around the town and turning them into usable spaces that can be free from time to time or very like low cost to rent, either for wedding receptions or meetings, things like that. So it generates a little bit of revenue for the nonprofit, but it also creates opportunity for use, like third spaces and things like that. And that was their intent. And I just think it's a really interesting thing. It's like how random. And then they oftentimes work with another local nonprofit that is specifically for artists with disabilities. It's called Artist Open Studio. It's really cool. Small, but the synergy between these groups is so powerful, and they can be so niche.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so niche. The ways that we can participate in this overall sense of community growth. That's not gentrification. It's not, corporate buyout. It's not these things. It's a literal revitalization. That's why I think that's probably a more appropriate term than revolution. Because I think with the idea of revitalization in mind, people realize just how much autonomy they have.
Yeah.
Like how much wiggle room there actually is in the system when you take it from that angle, and how much assistance may already be in play and resources that might already be in play that you otherwise might not be aware of, if that makes sense.
No, I definitely do. I do. And I think that speaking to that opportunity and those moments is really key. And I think it's kind of that flooding the zone idea that talked about last week. How there's all the negativity, all of the news and whatnot to fight against. It's it's a tide to fight, but the positive, hopeful stuff, and it's all incredibly usually hyper localized, where like the biggest successes end up being. And that I think speaks a lot to the fact that people are wanting some big beautiful kind of idea that will just, magically fix it all, but it's going to be a compiling of a bunch of small things all together, moving as in the same direction. All right, I will bring up Real For You page to ask this question and have a little bit of a chat. You got about we'll give you 10 minutes, and then my buddy AJ should be joining us after that. Thank you for joining us, my friend.
Hello. So this is actually has to do with a lot of things I've thought about, because I've been through a lot of situations, especially here in the U.S. in general, because I've been here all my life. So I've experienced homelessness and a bunch of other things in this country, and I realized the issues that come with that. And I've seen people in a lot of different situations need help that they can't always obtain, especially through like government services or other such things. And the thing I originally wanted to do, because I thought about the way it would work, is creating essentially a hiring agency that would work with companies, especially with people such as veterans, people with disabilities, people with mental health issues, and essentially have it where companies work with them. It would not only benefit the companies, because then it would benefit the economies as well, because the more people working, which means the more money being spent overall. And then people, especially with mental health issues, would find themselves as being, essentially, they would have something that they can do themselves, which will ultimately boost their confidence within themselves. And having a hiring agency that hires people and companies that work with them, it would also ultimately promote the view at all these companies would get through the fact of working with such a company that would benefit so many people. So it'd be beneficial in a multifaceted way. And then considering the hiring agency wouldn't need as many employees to run. They would just have to have a small amount of people. Then the excess money that would be used from that could be used to produce, buy property, land, to essentially create how do I go about saying that? To buy land, and then, what do you call it when one company works with another? Trying to remember the word for it. I was just thinking about this while you guys were talking.
I do want to point, while I give you a moment to think real quick, I do want to point to your idea there of, basically providing the businesses with an opportunity, because I think that a lot of the solutions that we worked forward with are going to be creative in that avenue of like, you haven't thought about hiring these people before, but, with this sort of adaptability to the program, it would generate not only good
good
press
PR
and good PR and whatnot for you, but it'd also be helping the community and all that kind of stuff. It's like a win-win-win. And so like addressing those types of solutions in ways that business leaders can buy into is a great way to move forward. So good point there.
It'd be collaboration among especially places that build like things like tiny homes or housing. And to essentially use the excess money from the hiring agency as it would expand, because I know it would be a great business model, especially for a great many companies. And but as it would expand, the money could be used to buy land in specific areas. It could be used to collaborate with house building companies to build houses for people of specific disabilities, dependent on what their situations and scenarios are, which would give them ultimately a lot more. They would learn a lot more on how to build such things, which would benefit their company for when they do sell products to other people. And then to collaborate with companies that do like solar electrical panels and other such technologies and things of that nature, which would ultimately create sustainability among a community of that nature, which would decrease the overall cost. And because it would be under the name of a business, it would be a tax write-off on top of that, which would save the company more money being able to put it into other facets of that. And then to take things even further, to have it where people in certain scenarios where they would need rides to and from, to build that into another aspect of the company, especially in the sense of like transportation, especially whether it's to medical appointments or other such things, and building essentially a pool beyond that of money to help people take care of their health beyond what their insurance is, or the government supplies them with money to do beyond what their job would entail. And to me, that would help veterans and other things of that nature, especially people with traumas or many other things, especially people who have had disabilities, because people with disabilities who are missing whether limb or certain other aspects, building the houses that could be sustainable for them, and it would create all these companies, or it would help all these other companies also look good through the fact of working with people in that design sense. And it would save people lots of money, and it would ultimately help the communities become wealthier, not only in knowledge, but I believe everyone has the ability to be useful, whether it is one way or another. I don't consider it just to be, oh, well, you can't walk. Well, they can do, like my dad was in a wheelchair. He couldn't walk, but he could type on a computer. He could do computer work and stuff like that. Or a person who's paralyzed from the neck down, which I had another friend who was in that situation. They might not be able to move, but they still have their intellectual property, which could be very useful in understanding a person's different perspective or point of view based on the fact of the way they see the world.
Absolutely.
So that's a lot of the things I'm interested in building, and yeah.
I can dig it, man. What do you think, Tony?
May I? I love it. First of all, I think it's brilliant, and I think your head's in the right place too. And I think of like a staffing agency, which I worked with a handful when I was with the Chamber of Commerce. There was a few that were members there, and the model is bumping up against a lot of friction with like Indeed and stuff like that. So like my mind immediately went to some kind of nonprofit organization that specializes in providing career and employment opportunities for veterans and those who deal with mental health issues or anything, or any other types of disabilities, with the mission statement of providing avenues for increased value in either construction of homes for these types of people, or transportation, or any of the other things. You know, the mission statement's sort of up to you, that back end of it. But the first part of it already sounds like a mission statement that you would then be able to work with other local agencies directly and work with local businesses directly without actually having to turn it into, say, like a private, like taxable entity like that, like a private business. Yeah. Just an idea. That's where my brain
I was thinking about it in that same sense as you are, having it be a nonprofit, because there's no need for profit as I'm trying to help people. If I can push all the money into facets where people can get help and have essentially a better way of life, to me, that's the most important thing. Because the better the community, the better the area, or the better everything goes on for everyone, the better overall life and interactions with life will be.
There's also like a trade organization, which is essentially what a Chamber of Commerce is, because you get a bunch of member businesses that are there to network with each other and to increase visibility to the community, right? That's the Chamber's job, is to bring them together. But they're a 501c6 not-for-profit trade organization, which, you know, is another interesting thing, because you have a board of directors, you have a director, so there would be a budget for the organization itself to do the administrative tasks, upkeep on a website, say, or any of the other staffing things that you'd have to do. And then your job really isn't to monetize anything in particular, but you're looking for member sponsorships, member donations, or actual, you know, memberships if it's a trade organization. Definitely talk to a CPA and a lawyer for sure to figure out, once you have some of the finer details of how and what and when. But it's a good, I think that's a good thing to do. It's a great pipeline, because my favorite part about it is that it does plug into existing agencies, which the existing status quo, like them, leave them, love them, or hate them, they're here. So if you can make something that's like modular and it can plug into something that's already there, you can be working with veteran services, senior services, mental health and addiction services, they're gonna fall at your feet with roses. They're gonna be like, wait, you're helping us do what now? You know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
that's the kind of thinking that I feel is the most powerful in the spaces of activism, because as soon as you said it, the idea unfolded in a million different directions and it had legs. So I think you're onto it, man. Sweet.
Yeah.
A lot
I think
of
probably
things I generally think about are set up in that mindset, whether it's here in the United States or whether it's other countries and stuff. Like I'll use so I use ChatGPT and I'll sit here and talk to it so I can sit here and get different interactions, figure out information, gather information. So I normally, one of the biggest things I always ask is, okay, what are the issues with this? Like, let's say, like Japan with their country, and then I'll go into depth and I'll sit here and dig into it and sit here and figure out ways to correct all of the issues. That's how I work on things, because that's the way I work. I can always figure out a way of fixing things.
Yeah. I love that, man.
Say it's great to have that that idea and theoretics and whatnot. I really wish you luck with your idea, and I appreciate you coming up and sharing it with us. I would suggest trying to get involved with like your local VFW or something like that. Spread the idea with them and see how they might be able to point you into resources like grants and things that might be able to get you started.
Definitely.
But yeah, thank you so much for your time, though. I really appreciate it. And do stick around. Say we have a Q&A section at the end of it. I can have you back up then, okay?
Yep, sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Heck yeah, that's
All
sweet.
right. And it's like those ideas, specifically when you feel for a particular subset of people, like veterans and disabled people and whatnot, when your heart goes into like those kinds of aspects, the challenges do get a little bit rougher, I'll say. But like there are groups of people out there that are trying to do similar, not the exact same thing, but they have ideas to help, veterans and disabled people. And like one of the biggest things that we can do in a sustainable and solutional sort of fashion is start building the coalition with the people that are like-minded. And so, finding people and sharing, that particular great idea might help get the ball rolling. And I really appreciate the enthusiasm, especially in that particular arena, because there's so many different avenues to consider. And employment's a big one because people want to feel useful. They want to they want to have a sense of giving to the bigger picture or whatnot. And it's kind of been ingrained in humanity for a long time that way. And I think that having agency speaks to that as well, like being able to choose to contribute in a way that your skill set allows for and whatnot gives you confidence and courage and that kind of thing to help move forward. Yeah, it can also help the mind. Exactly.
And the monies.
The money doesn't hurt, that's for sure.
Oh, really? Well, let's just be honest, man. You make a living, you get to do things and have things, pay bills, alleviate the stresses that come to us when we become indebted or contracted for monies in the future, which is sort of the same thing. So it's like, I think it's good, man. I think, again, my favorite part, and I wouldn't have had this direct epiphany without that conversation. So I appreciate you bringing them up, and I appreciate the sharing of that idea, because it dawned on me, there's something I already knew, but to say it in this way is like the modality and the modular nature of your idea and how it integrates into pre-existing systems or even groups or agencies is paramount. Like to be so insular and to be an island unto yourself, like you won't survive. It's no other thing than like it does really do take a village to do these things, and to have any sort of lasting staying power. It does take the community. It really does. And so to have something that could potentially fit into working with the VA, the Veterans Hospital or anything like that. Like that's smart. It's really smart.
And Tulip Girl brings up a really great point. Unfortunately, money does hurt the chances with people who use the disability in this country. They have very strict thresholds about how much money they can make outside the system before they lose those benefits. But unfortunately, like the treatments and the costs of the things that they need to maintain a certain threshold of life is way much more than the I think it's 12,000, 17,000. I could be wrong. I could be way off. I'm not really sure. It's a really low number though, considering like, and then there's a bunch of different issues with that as policy anyway, which again, part of the issue here is not only finding solutions forward, but pressuring the lawmakers to do better. You know what I mean? Like it's a multifaceted system. We don't hang our hat on the one thing. We don't try to reinvent the wheel completely and try to leave the system abruptly. The working within the status quo with the modular, the things that plug in is part of the solution as well, because this is a giant transition. It's not just an overnight flip of the switch. And so in that respect, the modularity is needed. And we have to think about that in the terms of, getting all of the movements made also takes affecting the current political system as well.
I can't talk and type at the same time. Sorry. Okay, no.
That's okay.
Yeah, the modular nature, that's probably a whole conversation unto itself, man. How is it that what you want to do and help, like in what way do you want to help out? What's on your...
Right. I think he's getting a call.
Nope. I tried to go open up the email. Like, think about all the things you have on your list and to talk about today, right? And it's like, think about then how does it plug into what's already here? Because think about how often community, like civic professionals, have ended up in our lives randomly over the last couple of years. Somebody's like, oh yeah, I'm a director, or 3 years ago I was like, they're ready for this conversation every time because they're already out there doing something similar to a lot of the topics that get discussed on your channel and on mine. It's they're already out there. And so if you have a great idea, if you have something that you feel could really help people sort of exit the system of dependency, then do it, man. Just make sure that at least at some point you start to think, well, who else could I link up with to help grow this thing,
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And it said in the comments here that churches can bypass a lot of the rules of nonprofits. I've seen churches do really great work, making sure people on the ground are actually fed and whatnot. Don't get me wrong, it's a gambit, it's a wash. I've seen mega churches that have closed their doors in times of flood, and I've seen like pastors go to jail because they end up keeping their doors open for too many people overnight, and they're in the wrong zone, so they get arrested for it or something. Like it's a whole gambit of things. But I think that there are avenues. I think that there's a lot of people. There's an opportunity that somebody's affiliation might make them seem marred in a way. I don't know how I'm going to make this clear, but basically, like, there are people who have deconstructed from church that when they see somebody is a believer, they immediately mark them in their mind as a certain way. And we got to get past stuff like that. Like, we really have to get past stuff like that and see like the human for human and not monolith the hell out of everybody, because like that's the division at work, and it's going to only disserve us. It's only a disservice to ourselves. It doesn't really help.
The person who would say that.
Of course I am. How long have you known me? Infinitely hopeful here. Just never running out of that bright sunshine. Somebody's got to do it. Damn it.
I think the thing is it's the Mr. Rogers thing, which is why I think I love coming back to that so much. It's like there are helpers in every space. There are cops who are helpers. There's people who work in Congress who are helpers, believe it or not. There are people in churches who are helpers. There's people in all the spaces who are helpers. And in some places, they might be harder to find. And that sucks.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean that there's not space and opportunity for more.
That's
yeah.
Right. It's just like everyone's roll of the die and where they live and how things are and who they are and all the things is all random. So it's really just important to remember that, look for the helpers. Look for the helpers. They're out there. And there's already people, I promise you, within 30 miles. And I'm from Ohio, so that doesn't seem like very far to me. But to some people, that might be forever. But relatively speaking, there are people already engaged. And the closer you are with them and the more you're willing to support them and they support you, that's when the stuff starts to grow and it actually starts to work, you know?
Yeah. Mackenzie down here says most people don't know what the first steps are and then scared to take the first step. And I think that that's a part of, you know, the inspiration that this space and others are trying to kind of cultivate. Because like for me personally, I was the kind of person who, when I woke up to the horrors of the world, I just was like a dog chasing a car. I was so excited, just wanted to help, had no idea how to, but I just want to help. And I think that, you know, that energy of mine transmuted into ways of, you know, just speaking to the point of there are possibilities. And I think that other people, when they wake up, being shown a list of examples, being given a bunch of ideas of like this way, just so that way at the sheer chance that they can be like, oh yeah, I can do that. And I also think that there's something about many different people like as a force kind of speaking to this instead of just little old us kind of thing. Like many different people in different fonts and flavors are coming out of the woodwork because the collective unconscious is absolutely boiling with this idea that the shift is needed. And so we are seeing it and I think that this space, TikTok, has almost become kind of a repetitive or how do I want to put this? Like it's become a space of feedback in a way where you get in what you put out kind of deal. And there's been some radicalization. There's been some movement of thought, like the way that just the two of us have like sharpened the idea that we present over the last 2.5, 3 years that we've known each other. You know, speaks to the fact that this space has an evolving nature and it's a tool. It can be utilized as a tool. It can be, and like both for us and against us. We have to be really, really careful about that. Thank you for the follow, folks. I really appreciate it. If you do like this conversation, please feel free to share the live with friends and whatnot. I should have another guest joining us very shortly to add some conversation to this matter. I do thank y'all for being here and tapping and liking and whatnot. It really means a lot to me because these conversations really matter. And Tony, thank you for being here.
I wouldn't miss it. Yes, I would.
I appreciate it.
I probably would have to miss it, but I made sure not to book it. Because I love you.
And I love you too, buddy. Thank you so much.
And if nobody else is going to have them, we might as well, you know?
Somebody's got to do it.
On this app that is definitely going to be here forever.
Right.
Good times. But I think as far as people not knowing what to do first, it's again, just look for the helpers. You know, places to start. I always say just type in nonprofit organization, foundation, try those different words and your zip code and just see. And then look at the about page, look at what they do, see who's on the board of directors.
Yeah.
With the director and be like, you might say like, oh shit, like I know that person, you know, like I never, you know, maybe not know them, but I know them enough to maybe like friend request them on Facebook or something and be like, hey, like I'm looking to do this or I'm trying to help out. It just starts with curiosity and looking for the helpers because they're already
You literally just pulled the word right out of my head. Yeah, I was going to say curiosity is honestly where it starts because like where we are going to be best suited is it's going to depend on a lot of variables, a lot of what your perspective is. Like what have you been good at? What did you spend the last like 10 years doing for your job? And like break that down into some elements. How can you apply that in a more civic engaged kind of thing? What are you passionate about? Is it food? Is it shelter? Is it, you know, transportation? Is it energy consumption? What gets you to think, you know, and this is an instant process. It's not something that you can be like, well, this, yeah, that. All right. So I'm going to go ahead, like take your time, take weeks with it if you need to, but like, you know, constantly think like, what would motivate me to move? And then at that point, if it's food, yeah, nonprofit, food banks, or farming practices, you know, there's a bunch of different avenues that breaks into, and it's the same for transportation and, you know, helping employment and all these other really great ideas that we've shared today. There is, you know, it starts, I think, with curiosity.
A lot of CEOs of nonprofits make a lot of money. They would be a director, sometimes a CEO. Sometimes they use that term, but most of the time you're going to find like a director and then the president of the board, usually, or the titles that you might see. But But either way, you can get bloated staff. Like we saw when we took over the organization. I won't throw anybody under the bus, but we saw a lot of waste. But those two had been there. There was a director and an executive assistant there for, I want to say, God, 20 years, something like that. And after a while, the friction of working with community and working with the next mayor and the next mayor and the new director of economic development comes in. Well, okay, the United Fund just got a new blah, 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 blah. And all these changes all the time and trying to rally people together and trying to keep people invested. You can tell it burns people out over time. And we could see going through the old meeting notes and stuff where eventually that friction freaking wears you down, man. And so then there was a lot of like Wendy's ordered every day on the organization dime. And not always Wendy's, but it was always takeout, you know. They were always getting food on the company dime. And eventually a pretty sizable bank account was whittled down to virtually nothing. And me and the co-director, both older millennials, had to come in and try to revitalize it. And then we were on the upswing, but then COVID hit. But that I digress on that. But you can just see how the friction burns people out, and so that these bloated executive staff, like salaries and things, can happen. Wasteful spending on some seminar to have some person come in and tell you about some new piece of software or you know what I mean? Like it's the wild shit that they spend money on. It's crazy, which is why I think they need new blood every few years, which is why, you know, I think we already have term limits, but term limits is another good conversation to have because it's for no other reason aside from corruption and all that stuff. People do get burned out, man. It's hard. It's an energy work. It's not just working with your hands and walking around and shaking hands. It's real energy work, man. It's tiresome.
I want to put forward something that, you know, we've talked before about the idea, and then I want to get to a few comments down here too. But we've talked about the idea in the past of like, you know, the 100 to 150, you know, that being a number of which how many people it can coexist in like a group setting kind of deal before it starts getting out of hand, because at that point not everybody can know everybody and all that kind of stuff. There's actually a further dive into that where any single person only has the capacity to care or, you know, keep in mind for about 100 or 150 people. And it varies depending on personality type and stuff like that. But taking that into account, the people who are elected to lead, because, and like, you know, those numbers are astronomical. They're way outside the bounds of what like our representative democracy was supposed to have been, which I think was like 77,000 people was supposed to be the cutoff. Some of these people are like representatives of over like 500,000 people. So like that's part of where the disconnect is. So how can one person even contain like we're not even talking empathy here, but like just the amount of space, the availability to you know, for so many people. It seems like a broken part of a broken system. But real quick before I move on, I want to just go over a couple of these comments because I really like the rewiring neural pathways, curiosity, imagine and play, asking questions to rewire brains, I think is key among here. Play, I think, is something that we should do more of. A little farther up.
I missed a lot.
Yeah, there's a great conversation happening here, and I love it. It's going to take me a little while to get through. But yeah, I love that comment because I think about that constantly. You saw the CEO comments, you know, making a lot of money and whatnot. The self-sustainability, while I think it's a key factor and definitely an important step to feel the self-agency and resolve in oneself, collective sustainability, which is what Lawrence with Farm Fresh 24/7 does preach about, because, you know, we are a community, and, you know, I think that we can do better in community and bigger groups of people to sustain collectively. Land trust for stewards of the land, I definitely agree. In fact, same buddy Lawrence is working on doing something kind of like that over the city of Atlanta, where he's going to have like different areas proposition to make, you know, gardening spots and whatnot. It's a thing in the right direction. I know that in Colorado you can buy a certain kind of property in a certain kind of area to do stewardship land center, but it's a very complicated land in Colorado is really, really complicated. I tried looking for that and it's really hard. Rotational leadership is the other one I really wanted to bring up though, because I think that is really important. I've seen organizations where like the person at the top, the president, you know, and the board and all that kind of stuff, they get stagnant, they get stale, and it's one of those, I think, you know, having a rotating and refreshing kind of thing is a really important key here.
And as far as lobbyists go, we can't forget that And I'll say the same thing about term limits. The reason we want to talk about term limits in lobbyists is because we've only seen poor representations of their utility. We could have citizen lobbying firms. Again, this
definitely
is
could.
an initiative. And it takes us to getting the right people together, and you never know who's out there. It's like people say, well, where's the money come from? Or how do we, and all these question marks. I mean, indeed, the panic starts creeping up the back of your neck. Just shh. Just imagine you're starting a band, okay? It's time to hit the road. We're going to book some shows, the wild adventure in front of you. That's what life is. And so, we just have to understand that, like, whatever these passions are that we have, a citizen lobbying firm is totally viable in a multitude of facets. Like, it doesn't just have to be like some vague citizens thing. I mean, think about specifically what it is you want to lobby Congress for, and then do that. That's a tool that's available to us. So getting rid of lobbyists is like, it's almost like closing a door that we could have been using this whole time. And the same with term limits. The only reason we see that is because we see the stagnation and we see the corruption over time, insider trading, and all these nightmarish things and unfair things. But what if Judy gets in there and she's kicking ass for 16 years? Like, are we really going to make Judy leave on a technicality when it's like, but Judy's actually kind of killing it right now? Like,
right.
You know what I mean? I'm just weary of shutting doors that we maybe should be and could have been, and, all using and all that stuff.
Absolutely. Hey, Jessie, how you doing?
Hey, so thankful to join you. I've been meaning to get back to you, but when you're trying to hold nonprofits accountable for messed up stuff they're doing, sometimes life gets away from you.
There's a lot going on in the world right now, so I don't blame you for sure. It's many different dishes spinning. I appreciate you coming up and say anytime we have these discussions and stuff, I always like it in different perspectives and whatnot. And I think yours, especially since you're dealing so closely with nonprofits that both, do good things and don't do good things. You have a pretty valid perspective on the idea.
Thank you. Yeah, one of my ways of resistance is on my front porch right now. I painted a sign that I put out that says, if you won the lotto, how would you spend your time? It's one of the ways I'm subtly rewiring folks' brains from my front yard.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Take every chance you can, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah. And I think that I'm not sure which part I was going to jump in on. I have so many different, this is a sustainability one, correct?
Yes, that is correct. There's a bunch of
about some scheming.
Yeah.
Well, churches have a lot of loopholes that they're able to have. Like, you can get a license to be a church in like 7 days, and it can be retroactive. And if something is part of your religion, then you can require folks to comply with the ADA. And there are certain things that I'm sitting here wondering, okay, what are the places where they create the most leverage against us? And how could we put ourselves in the positions to use the same resources that they use to keep us stuck?
I mean, I'm definitely down for like taking pages out of books, like Tony mentioned earlier with lobbying and how we can have our own citizens lobbying. Like, just because it has been used in terrible ways against us doesn't mean that it can't be a useful tool. And that I think is part of the many paths. And being able to, there's been like discussion back and forth in this group if we want to start our own religion and just go that way with it. And I personally don't want to be called a cult, but I mean, we need a cult-like mentality to really kind of get this thing moving in the right direction. Hello, AJ. Welcome in, my buddy.
I mean, to be fair, we're in a time astrologically where people are super susceptible to cults and they're looking for answers, and they're too filled with shame that they're trying to do it on their own and falling into some weird pipelines that I know because I fell, I started skating and I was like, am I sliding into a pipeline that's I'm going to take some steps back. So I've thought about putting myself out there, being like, I'm not your cult leader. I'm not your mom. I'm not your therapist, but I'll sit in this shit show with you and help you figure it out together.
Discernment is needed for sure. And it's helpful to have friends that can help you discern. Thanks for joining us, AJ. How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm good, man. I'm well. I'm happy to be here. The 20-minute drive that took us to get to the doctor appointment took over an hour to get home. So
Well,
happy to have arrived.
welcome home.
Yeah. No, man, I'm glad to be here. So happy to arrive, man. So
Yeah, man.
that's my day.
Right on. Well, we've already kind of like done the philosopher top-down look at this idea, and I was really happy to get some of the notes and stuff that you sent me before the thing, and I just we'll continue the conversation. I think we can kind of get back on track of where we can go, what ideas we can spark in this kind of conversation. I know that you had. I think the point that you were really made was about transportation and things like that. But I wanted to open the floor to you to give you a few minutes to express your general thoughts.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me in. I feel honored to learn right next to every single one of you because I'm nobody but just a human here learning as well. So sustainability and solutions, these are two great topics to like have hand in hand. Throughout the journey of our life, you find moments where you could be sustainable. Some of the things I took away from it is what can we cut? That's how I become more sustainable in my personal life. What can I cut? What's the junk I can cut out of my life? How can I begin to make myself, my life, more sustainable? And then from there, you're expanding out, right? Because when you decide what junk you can cut, then you decide what stores you can cut, right? You decide who you can go to, where you can redirect. Start listing your needs, actual needs, and then how do we fit those needs? Refining that shopping list, right? That shopping list sometimes can get really long, and then like, oh, actually, I don't need that. I really don't need that. Something to help with that myself personally over the last couple of years, I've been trying to institute is I call it the put it back and think method, right? Like, pick it up on the shelf like, ooh, man, I really want this shiny object. Do I need it? Let me put it back. Let's put that impulse away. I'm impulsive, right? That ADHD, right? Put that impulse back and then think about it, right? 9 out of 10 times, I'm going to forget about it because I didn't need it. It was just that thing that was right there in front of me. So it's kind of getting rid of that. And then just finding sustainability in our communities. How can we grow that sustainability further, right? How can we go from this micro level to that macro level? How can we take it bigger? I think you said the point in there I was going to bring up. The big one, I think, is transportation, right? Is depending on where you are in the country or the world, especially in a major metropolis area, why is there traffic? There's a freaking tram station that brings me right here. The only reason we didn't go today is because my wife had a doctor's appointment. There's a time limit. But why are these people taking cars to work? It's because there's a class mindset when it comes to public transportation. I don't want to get on that bus. I don't want to get on the bus with the poors, Well,
and it's funny because when you bring up the bus, one of the first things that comes up in my mind, and I don't know why, maybe it's the millennial in me, but is Speed, the movie, right? So like Keanu and what's her face gets on the bus, and like if you really look at they come up with some crazy story about why they are on the bus, and then of course the whole thing ensues. And there was a comedian that did a really great bit about it, but that they were and it is very much a class kind of mindset, and one that we should try to obliterate. There's beautiful graphics that I've seen over and over again about like how many people in like cars versus the same amount of people in a bus and how much space that takes up and like all that kind of stuff, and by emissions and da. So like all the metrics on it say yes. I think that one of the worst arguments against bus routes and transportation of that nature is usually people say that my time is much more precious than that. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, I used to work 35 minutes away drive time, but it would take me 2 hours and 45 minutes to get there via bus. And it's like, that's a big time deficit for me to have to give up. I would love to have, light speed rails and, those kinds of, things, or at least, and I think that there's other avenues, bicycles and having, infrastructure for various different types of transportation instead of it being car centric. It's a great way forward.
Yeah. Carpooling's another one, right? And there's a lot of different modern ways to carpool. Even some companies and corporations are doing it. right? I know Tesla's a big one that does it down in Texas. Here where I'm at here in Washington, actually the state park I work at, they contract out parking here on the state park, because you have Costco headquarters, you have Expedia headquarters, you have Microsoft headquarters.
Next to your park?
Well, here in the town or here around the local area, and so
Yeah.
they park here and then they bus them to work and back. So it helps with that commute time, but that commute time is there because I'm pretty sure I passed several of them buses when I was flying by in the HOV lane.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And so, like,
that commute time is something that everybody has to factor into when utilizing that public transportation. But like I said, my message is always, are you too good for that public transportation and why?
Right. No, I feel you.
So,
And-
have y'all ever seen New Amsterdam, the show on Netflix, where the new director of the board, the new head of the hospital comes in and he realizes that his folks, like the people in his hospital, are spending a lot of their time in transportation, and he decides to set out to have just a New Amsterdam bus to take the people who work there to and from. I think it's more about providing solutions and showing people that a different way is possible rather than shaming them into unpacking their unconscious biases, because they're going to fight you kicking and screaming on anything that invokes shame, or a lot of people haven't unpacked that perfectionism, fear of failure. So if we can provide them with a different way that says, hey, it's possible, and kind of right now I see us kicking and screaming towards, no, I don't want to go that way. But what if we provide an alternative way that's more attractive, more, I don't want to say seductive, but
No, it can be. It very much
people
can be.
excited about it instead of going, no, this is not what I want to happen. Okay, what do you want to happen instead? And let's provide some examples of what that could look like and people doing it so that you can see a different model exist. Because if you've never been in a healthy relationship your life, you don't realize that you're not in a healthy relationship.
Yeah. I mean, and the transitive property, all that is true of, the way that we have existed in community. Like a lot of when I talk about when I was a kid growing up, there was no childcare. I went to my cousin's house. You know what I mean? And like I got to hang out there until my mom got off work and then she came and picked me up. I remember my cousin and I just like fawning over like Dragon Ball Z and like watching every episode together. The episodes we didn't get to see together, like we were calling each other immediately afterwards. Like, that was, and like, but now there's people who pay five figures to make sure that their little ones are washed or whatever while they go earn money. And it's become almost the point of dystopia because like that element, in some circles I've been called nostalgic for this, and it's just like no, that's not what it is. It's a better way to do things, because like when we take our supports that we can gather outside of paying for them through community of family or whatnot, and friends and the social bonding network that we choose to have, like the whole find your tribe thing applies here. Like you find people that can help support you in these issues and needs and whatnot, and together you move forward to solve the problems in your area in whatever sustainable way that you find. I think that offering up a plethora of options that gets us off, that either is modular and still uses a little bit of the system, and some that completely buck the system, gives people a creative space to think about this outside the box. And I think that battling the apathy, ennui, and creature comforts is kind of a raw deal for us hopeful types, but we get the cards that we're dealt. The chess pieces are what they are. So inspiring different thought patterns could be as simple as living that choice yourself and showcasing it, those little bit of receipts or whatever, or just, I don't know. Like, I think the idea, though, is we have to present the ideas often because, as I said last week, new people are waking up every single day. And everybody's going to find their place at their own speeds. But flooding the zone with discussions like this is part of the way forward. Part of encouraging collaboration.
Yeah, child care costs today. I think that was like my first eye-opening experience into modern adulthood. Right? Like I grew up the same way you did, Tripp. Like I didn't go to any daycare or any. I went to someone's house,
Right.
you know, from the moment I remember, and that was childcare. I had family members that offered childcare. They offered babysitting. But even in my small hometown, I think I don't even know if there's a daycare now. But anyway, when I started having children and had to put them into daycare, all I could say is thank goodness me and my ex-wife were both in the military, because that was the only way we could have afforded that or needed it. But after that, it's atrocious. I couldn't even imagine having small children today and needing to provide for them and find childcare. It's
Right.
asinine.
Can I just really quickly, because a lot of the things we've circled around today, I think can harken back to living the American dream and the fact that we're in the finding out period of fucking around during the 1950s towards living in a single family home with your own picket fence, your own lawnmower, your own everything out in the suburbs. So you have to drive everywhere. It's like a lot of this harkens back to programming from living the American dream, where that took away our ability to be in community. And it piled on a lot of personal shame and thinking that it's a personal moral failing if you're struggling and not having a village. But I think that we're in the finding out implications of what it does to take away somebody's village. And it's not like our fault. This has been a slow progression over decades.
Well, yes, you're right. But there is opportunity to make a different choice. Like the idea of, reaching out to your neighbors and having just a simple conversation that isn't like, trying to make friends. The idea of that, and it's the old borrowing a cup of sugar, and or sending the casserole around when you know that they've fallen on hardships. Like all of these ideas can still very much be done by us who are now the adults in the room and can take those certain strides. I think that there's a lot of fear in the area that it won't be reciprocated, but like we have to show up to be seen and to be part of this collective. And as I said earlier, community is not always convenient. But that doesn't mean it's not it's not needed, it's not necessary. And it's one of those, it might to some people be a double-edged sword, the idea of that vulnerability, putting yourself out there and, trying to connect in ways that don't feel comfortable. Last week I talked about longer tables and how he had this idea of having a dinner with your neighbors and making it an event. He only got like 10 or 12 people to do so, but he himself went through the process of documenting how scary it was for him to go knock on his neighbor's door, even though he was asking other people to do so. He went and did it, and they had, sloppy joes, I think is what he served that night for that thing. And it was like, it's a good example of how far we've come from like the block party, the neighborhood strength, the neighborhood watch programs, and like those kinds of elements. They need revitalization. We don't, and like Tony said, we don't need revolution, we need revitalizing. And so we need to bring back some of the stuff that has just been fallen by the wayside because the creature comforts and the 2.5 kids and the white picket fence has done its damage. And not only that, I mean, also stranger danger and, all of the, there's a bunch of propaganda and tuning that's been happening over time.
I think that the thing that a lot of us who have spent the last couple of years working on unraveling this, the best thing that we can do is being a living example of what it looks like to live a different way, to choose compassion and empathy over turning the other way. To like, this is one of the things that really irritated a lot of folks in my town. For a couple months, I was like, all right, if the people in charge are the people who believe in Jesus, I'm going to figure out more about religion. So I spent some time in the energy of Jesus, and I was like, whatever happens in town, I'm just going to act as if Jesus would, knowing what I know about him, and respond as if he would. And that ruffled a lot of feathers, but it also built up some resilience in my nervous system so that this past couple weeks, I started pulling cards and talking about astrology in my small town, and the number of people who have come out of the woodwork and said, I was scared to talk about it, thank you, is, yeah.
I mean, that speaks kind of to the fact of like you have to meet people where they are, and there's something to be said about having a Christ-like mentality and then like propagating the fact that you have one, like actually living it versus, just reading it. And yeah,
performative activism.
Exactly. Yeah, I've also heard it as armchair activism, but yeah, and it's one of those things that we have to meet the people where they are. Like, using their language is going to make them, much more comfortable with the situation. And yeah, sometimes it's religious, sometimes it's the fact that some of us may speak a bit intellectually, and it just doesn't click and connect, and we have to meet them where the people are. AJ, you said you look like you were about to say something.
Oh yeah, I was just kind of going off there. So like talking on the line of like building those bridges in the community, right? How are we willing to build a bridge if we're unwilling to greet what's on the other side?
Right.
If we're unwilling to greet and understand what's on the other side, why are we willing to build that bridge? Why are we wasting those resources? So if we're willing to put those resources to extend those bridges, let's greet it. Let's not meet it with disdain. Let's not meet it with closed ears and eyes. So that's how you build those bridges. And then in that understanding, you gain that compassion, you gain that empathy, and that's how you develop and you grow.
Yeah.
How have you all been successful in finding people who can have that conversation about building a bridge to something else? I find that a lot of people are so dysregulated that they don't even want to acknowledge the reality we're living in.
So usually, and I think Tony may agree to this, is just letting them talk it out first. Like letting them get everything out of their chest and, just let them be heard goes a long way. Ain't that right, Tony? How would you put it?
I don't come across this way on TikTok very often, but like I was the class clown. Like nobody really takes me seriously, like where I'm from. Just so everybody.
I can actually say that in real life, he never takes anything seriously. I can vouch for that.
Ever. Like if we were standing on a canyon enjoying our time, maybe we were all hanging out for the first time, and then like the comet starts coming, like I'm cracking a joke. I might even moon one of you. Like I don't know, I don't care. Like okay, so let's just be super honest. So to get people's guard down, and I'm an entertainer as well. I toured for 10 years. I've been on many, many stages. People's insecurities and their pre-programmed, none of it scares me. Like none of it, because I know what it is and I see it for what it is. And just like Tripp said, there's two ways. You let them get it out, unless they're a chatty Cathy, then you got to escape. You got to find an escape route because it won't end. Run, okay? But either way, or you disarm them, and there's a bunch of ways to disarm them, and we each have our own little strengths. Mine is comedy, crude comedy, and it didn't matter if I was sitting in the room with an ambassador from the Philippines or the city commissioners, or I was at my plug's house getting the quarter of some like good, okay? Like I was always the same guy, and you can disarm people in such a way that I've had some of my favorite political conversations and conversations like this about a new future conversations in line at the grocery store. Like those are the best places to have them. They don't always happen in lecture halls and panels and shit like that. You know what I mean? And so
yeah,
most people just want to be seen first, because so many of us walk through our days without being seen, feeling truly seen. And I'll say that for myself. So it's like when I finally do feel seen, like in my physical 3D space, it's such a wonderful feeling, isn't it? We all like it. And yet when we enter into these spaces of bridge building or political discourse, immediately that goes out the window and we're just like, I don't even know who I'm talking to. You know what? Immediately, fuck you. How about that? And it's like, wow, okay. Then we wonder why the country's on fire. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I think the best way to do it is just let people get their shit off their chest. I was just saying this to Tripp earlier. It's like, let's say we start some mutual aid thing and we're unloading the truck. We're getting some baby formula to put into the dry storage area. And I'm unloading with some guy who wants to talk about QAnon and Hillary and all her evil deeds and stuff. Like, am I going to be like, we need to get rid of this guy? No. Because he's helping carrying the formula into the dry storage. Like, that's what we're here to do. Let him say it. And then make fun of him for it later. It's fine. It'll make fun of you for your beliefs back. It's probably going to be okay. And most of us don't see it that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Usually I try to ask those people questions. Do I want to hear a conspiracy theory? Absolutely. And I'm going to have 5 follow-up questions because I want to know how you arrived at that, because there are inevitably other people who think the same thing that you do, and I would like a little bit more insight on it.
Mm-hmm.
Word. That's a really great way to tackle it. I mean, but the knee jerk that we have seen, like with cancel culture and whatnot, is if you do not think the same, then you don't get to be in my space. And that is detriment. That is literally a tool of the oppressor, at work at its finest. Probably one of the best that they have in their toolkit. And it's one of those things where instead of throwing, instead of drawing the line, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, we've got to find a way to move forward, even when these people, even when those sorts of situations occur. And I know that in the few times that I got to go help at the food kitchen, food bank of the Rockies, the conversations went many different places, and there was definitely one point where somebody, there's a kitchen manager there, of course. And when somebody inevitably gets off the rails about those sorts of tinfoily things, she's very good about kind of, steering the ship back in a good direction, because the people that are working in this kitchen, I was probably not the youngest, but among the youngest at 35, you know what I'm saying? And it's just, but it's a mix of people that are just wanting to do good and feed other people. Really, at the end of the day, just people wanting to help people. And I want to showcase more of that as often as possible. Because I think that it's honestly, I don't want to, it's knee jerk. It can be knee jerk. And it can be one of those things where, people finding the helpers and invites you to do in kind, that kind of deal. After seeing so much of the good stuff, you're going to be motivated to move. And of course, it starts from self and figuring out what your skill set and where your strengths and what you can actively contribute. That's its own journey. That can take time. Don't get frustrated with yourself. It can take time, but eventually you'll find out that, hey, this one skill I've been doing at work, when I wasn't really thinking or applying myself, could actually be really useful in the community in this certain way. And there's this group that's starting up this thing. I might want to get with them. I might not. And it's the power of personal choice can be reflected in a bunch of different ways. And when you look towards community engagement and solutions in that respect, I think it's a cascade. I think not only will you then inspire others around you and whatnot, but it's a slippery slope. Once you get started, massive movements will happen. So,
especially with Uranus moving into Gemini yesterday, being able to see both sides of a perspective, or being able to see another complex nuance to these situations, the astrology is open for people to have expanded views, but that also means a lot of information overload. But
wait, what'd you call me?
But y'all, there's a full moon in Capricorn on Thursday, and that is all about looking at the power structures that you're a part of and saying, is this working for me? Are these systems that I'm a part of worth what I'm contributing? And if not, how am I going to reassess and allocate my energy to something that is worth building with folks that I align with? So I'm hopeful that that's going to happen. And I see a lot of former people pleasers, who are starting to get really tired right now. And I see that being one of the things that's going to kind of cascade some of this momentum in the direction of wanting to build something new.
Yeah.
So having something that they can build with is really helpful, instead of torching everything.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's opportunity. Yeah, they say there's opportunity to see good in this shift, and I hope that, I don't know, when it comes to the astrological stuff, I definitely feel it, because I know, for instance, I know people who, instead of who have the exact opposite expression when Mercury goes into retrograde. I've seen it for myself, how people's energies can shift in those kinds of ways. So I know not to knock it. I'm really excited to see what movements people do in both a conscious and unconscious kind of way. You know what I mean? The shifting that is going to happen inevitably. And I think there's many different factors to it. I think that there are some energies at play, but I think that, like I usually say, the collective unconscious is boiling with the idea that a perspective shift is so badly needed that it's popping up in different fonts and flavors all over the place. And I love to see that. I want to highlight that and show every example that's possible. But I think that there are examples that we can go towards that highlight instances that will create the change going forward. Like, there's groups out there. I know I keep bringing up Lawrence, but I just feel like he's one of the ones that's farthest ahead. There's also Free Water and like, according to Jay Friday, 300 companies that are doing something somewhat similar to get a modular buck off of the system. So for instance, and to really quickly answer the question down here, today's panel is completely American based. That is not something that I try to do. My friend Jay Friday is a little bit more of a world traveler and just came back from England. But I am working with the respected guests who respect me and sit in the circle. So if you have somebody in mind, send them my way, send them to this platform channel. I would love to have a discussion with them and try to get them up. We have 3 more live panels this month. Next week, we're doing the Citizen Story revisit. We're going to talk about the paradigm shift that's desperately needed by itself. Then we're doing building bridges across communities on July 22nd. That'll be another important conversation where we look at how we can really see people to people as well, and some really great topics there. And then on July 29th, we're doing media literacy and critical thinking. The panel for that one is full right now. Really excited to bring that discussion to you folks at the end of the month. There might be another one the following week. I still haven't quite decided. Depends, because I'm going to be on vacation technically. But I would love to bring a topic about, let's see, hold on. I wrote it down in my notes. Where are you Ruling going? By committee. I'm going to Ohio. I'm going to Ohio to see my buddy's concert and go to Cedar Point. And then I'm also going back to New Mexico to pitch the Citizens Revival, which is going to happen in August of 2026. So, it's a big time for me is basically what I'm saying. But that being said, I want to talk potentially about ruling by committee, the third party wave. But more on that to come. Thank you all for being here, liking and tapping and sharing and all the good stuff. We really appreciate you being in on this conversation. We're wrapping towards the last 20 minutes or so. I do have to end this at a certain time because I have other engagements this evening. Thank you so kindly for all of the gifts. So I'm guessing what I'm actually gearing y'all towards right now is final words. Because, this has been a discussion that has gone a lot of different places, and I would love to keep on talking about it. In fact, we'll probably do a sustainability solutions in season 3 if I get a chance to, although it probably won't be in this space. It'll probably look a lot different. But just to, I think that we've gone some really great places. I want to thank everybody who's been up in the box today. I know that we are talking about these things as a blueprint. None of what we suggest is set in stone, has to be this way, ride or die, otherwise it won't work. That is not what we're projecting. Instead, we want people to get creative and find solutions that may look like the trajectory of a path that we've taken, but be slightly different, because your creativity brings something different. And I want to just hopefully touch on the fact that maybe we can be inspired to make better waves going forward, and I really appreciate everybody who sat with me today. That being said, Tony, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you for last words. We're just going to go clockwise.
Me first?
Yes, you first.
Hell yeah. I think to anybody who is wanting macro, large-scale, sweeping, systemic changes, I think it's multifold. The one way that makes the most sense to me, that's the most assured, surefire way, is this watershed approach. Where I start, you start, he starts, she starts, they start, we all start. Somewhere, somehow, in our way. And what do I mean by start? You break it down: food, shelter, assistance, and then break assistance down. And then what are you into? What moves you? Are you a survivor of trauma and abuse? Is that where your heart lies? Do you have the strength to go back into that space and help other people out? Is there maybe an agency or nonprofit or some sort of entity that you can create that is modal and can plug into existing systems that are already in place in the city that almost doubles your chances of success? And so finding the way that you plug in is essential. And the list is huge, which is why it would be almost impossible for us to come on here and try to list every single way that we could systemically change this over time, the slow, assured way. Because even if we get that large-scale, systemic, macro, sweeping change, you're still going to be adapting new agencies and departments. And who's going to fill those agencies and departments? People. It inevitably comes down to us to enforce whatever system comes into play. So to me, the idea of sustainability comes in finding your niche and finding enough passion, muster enough energy to get out there and start networking in a way to plug into what's already there and start, to me, what is the surefire way that we can change this. Because if the systemic change ever comes, you'll already be there. You're already there. You're already doing the thing that you wish the whole thing would be doing. And you can be an example of it, and it can spread like a good virus. As long as we get enough people doing it and documenting that they do it and documenting that it works. So it feels overwhelming, but treat it like an adventure. Treat it like you're starting a new business or a new band instead of some daunting task like you're saving humanity or something. Just do your little part in your little way, in the way that lights you up, and you will effectively be changing the world. And you can die happier knowing that. I truly believe it.
Word. Very well said, my friend. Thank you so much for those last words and for being here. I just, always appreciate your perspective on these topics. Thanks, AJ, absolutely. Sorry we didn't get to have you up for as long as we wanted to talk, but I appreciate you coming in with such wisdom. And yeah, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, no, I'm super happy to have been here and be part of the community, or this community conversation, as my dog rudely interrupts me. My closing thoughts is kind of segues a little bit. You think me and Tony shared notes as we go into this, but no. Get into your communities, right? Volunteer and find your thing, right? And then I challenge you, find something that's not your thing. Mix your communities. I sometimes view, building this community as we're ecosystems, right? It is a giant ecosystem. And every bit, there's smaller systems that build that ecosystem. Every group is an ecosystem, right? So those mall walkers, they're an ecosystem, right? The person that makes your coffee, an ecosystem, right? That the people that are doing yoga in the park, they're an ecosystem. So go intermingle with them. They might not be your normal crowd, but that's how you make that connection. That's how you shake hands across the aisle. That's how you meet people that you wouldn't normally meet. So build that into that growth, that community growth as you expand yourself. And then the last one is slow down. You're going to miss that vital connection opportunity. Look at another one I always point to people that gets overlooked now because we're in 2025 and it's all right here in our face. The community information board. They're in your local grocery store. They're in your library. They're all over the place. And there are tons of opportunities to connect with your community there, to find your people or to find new things. I look forward to the next conversations, building bridges. So I'm going to save some of my notes specifically for that. But that's my first segue into it. Build that bridge. Reach across the aisle. Find somebody you wouldn't normally shake hands with and have an honest conversation with them. So thank you guys again for being here. Appreciate y'all.
Well said, AJ. Thank you so much again for being here and sharing such wisdom. May we all be inspired to go have conversations outside of just a little bit. I mean, even if it's just a little bit outside your comfort zone, having a discussion with another human being it's important. We're social beings, all right? That we gotta do it. It's like, think about it, checking off the to-do list. Just try it once or twice. I bet you're gonna like it. And Jessie, thank you so much for coming up on the spot. I really appreciate you throwing some wisdoms at us with the astrology and whatnot, especially. Again, thank you.
Not where I thought I would be, a couple of years ago talking about astrology on a public platform. And thank you for letting me come up here. I think some of the most important things for sustainability of the movement, we're working with a lot of folks who are burnt out or on the verge of burnout. And so being able to acknowledge both your positionality, like what part do I play in the system, helps you kind of see where your leverage points are, and also taking taking stock of what's already in your community, because trying to reinvent the wheel is just going to lead to resentment and competition. And competition is one of the things that, if we could get rid of that competition mindset, some things would be really a lot easier right now. But Deepa Iyer has a social change ecosystem map that talks about the either 8 or 10 different roles of people in the revolution that considers things like burnout. So looking at that and thinking, what are the things that fill me up, like that provide reciprocity in my skill set, so that I'm not plugged into 5 different things, but I can kind of experiment with these different ones and not try to do everything at once. And kind of knowing more about yourself and unpacking some of that shame that keeps us from making connections. I still don't know exactly how to do that. I think that's going to be a community thing, but knowing what part you play provides where you have leverage, and knowing your skill set and what fills your cup helps you direct your energy in a way that is complementary to interdependence.
Absolutely, well said. Thank you so much for being up here. And on that note, I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye, everybody. Bye now.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. So with that, another wonderful conversation has been had. I want to thank today's guests, Tony, Jessie, and AJ, for coming up and giving us some great perspective in different arenas. I want to thank all the guests who sat and gave us questions and whatnot, and the Real For You page for coming up and speaking his truth about his idea about veterans. I think that this conversation went a lot of different directions. I think that mainly, first and foremost, I want to put forth to you that we have any chance, any small leverage to make a different choice can lead to a wildly different outcome. And so with that, be inspired to go have a conversation with someone you normally wouldn't. Strike up a conversation while you're in line at the grocery store. I mean, I know they can be a little bit uncomfortable, but you might end up making a really good friend that way. You never know. You just got to put yourself out there. It's a part of the space and the way forward. As far as the topic of sustainability and solutions, it's a big amalgamous one. There's not going to be one simple direct answer, but a bunch of little possibilities that could lead to a really great wave of change. And on that note, until next time, be well, fellow citizens, and have a great night.